Microtrending.
Welcome back. I'm Gabrielle, and you are listening to Microtrending, the podcast for anything that is having a moment, for better or for worse. In terms of for better, I hope you are doing well. I'm a little bit late to recording this. This month is off to a busy start in a positive way. Also have plenty to do the rest of this month, which I will probably share as we go along. I have family visiting this week, and then I'm going to be visiting family for most of June, which hopefully means for everyone's sake, including my own, that I might be a little bit less online, spending quality time with loved ones, but the internet beckons and waits for no one. So we will see. But in terms of just things happening already this month, I had the ultimate pleasure of joining the Glow Job podcast. That's Glow Job with a G. It is a beauty industry podcast that is super conversational and fun. It's not just about the business of beauty, even though they do interview founders and other people in the industry. It's about trends. It's about just cultural happenings, products, consumer culture, some personal insights from the hosts, Sasa and Julia. They are both so kind, so smart, funny, also gorgeous and accomplished. Everything. I'm honored to know them and to be part of their podcast cinematic universe at all. I met them before just by connecting online and went to a girl dinner kind of networking community event, and we've just decided to collab on some stuff. So I made some videos for them that I'll be posting later on, kind of in the vein of the starter pack aesthetic series. And then my segment with them, I believe, will be posted again on the Glow Job podcast at the end of June. TBD, will let you know. But regardless of my involvement with them, recording with them, please go ahead and give them a follow if you are interested in the beauty industry at all, in consumer culture. If you like the trend-related stuff that I share here, you'll probably like what Glow Job has going on. They've got a super polished operation running. Give them a follow and give them a listen and a watch on YouTube. That is my plug for the Glow Job podcast. Shout out Sasa and Julia. Anyway, I recorded with them last week, and it's funny because something that came up organically is related to what I actually wanted to talk about today on here. One of the co-hosts mentioned that she was recently, I think last week, at the Polo Lounge, and she was just minding her business in a booth with her friend who she was meeting, and who walks in but Kris Jenner, waltzing in new face first. And she did mention that she was wearing her classic big sunglasses, so she didn't really get a great look at the alleged deep plane facelift. She couldn't see quite how tight her face had been pulled, but we've seen the photos. And she saw Kris IRL. And we have seen this seemingly seamless face work done a few times now. It is becoming its own weird micro trend that's like kind of hush hush, which is ridiculous because it's so obvious that it's more than just drinking more water or just Botox. But obviously Kris Jenner, I guess more controversially recently, Lindsay Lohan. And I say controversially because she looks amazing. No shade to Lindsay, but she's still denying, right? Or, I mean, not necessarily like denying that she looks different, but she's like attributing it to all sorts of silly things like people used to do like 10, 15 years ago. It's very clear something is afoot. And by afoot, I mean a face. And then who else? Christina Aguilera, again, looks great. Looks like a different person. Can't lie. And then Anne Hathaway. And I still don't know. I feel like Anne Hathaway, she doesn't look so significantly different, but she looks great. Anyway, it's more than just drinking water, and Kris is just the latest to make her debut, for her new face to make a debut. And I do want to point out, and this is not going to be about plastic surgery overall. There's like broader trends that I want to talk about, and I am not an expert. The only thing I can maybe expertly comment on is where to get a BBL for your labubu. I can give you a tip if you need that. I've seen a few videos now. But in terms of human surgery, okay, the surgery is less of the issue than the broader body-related trends, which I will get into. I have another theory, but I just want to be clear that I do not feel strongly against people modifying their body for themselves and their own personal happiness, self-confidence, whatever. I'm not standing in the way of a nose job or a boob job or whatever. And mostly because that's none of my business. I think it's insane when people get really incensed and up in arms about somebody making a change to their body. Like, I just think there are bigger things to worry about. But on the like celebrity and influencer scale of things where you are actually influencing things that are happening, I think there is something a little bit more, there's more responsibility. There's more to be maybe held a little bit more accountable for there. But at least very recently, there seems to be something trending more in terms of like radical transparency. I think people are taking it in more of a positive light. I'm not talking about Lindsay denying stuff, but people are just stepping out boldly with entirely new faces, or they're doing what Kylie Jenner just did and revealing the secret recipe to her boob job. Now, I kept seeing posts about this, but when I was like looking it up in a browser, when I typed in Kylie Jenner boob job, the next word suggested auto-populated was recipe. So I know it sounds like funny, but that's what people are looking up. What else do you want to call it? And we'll never know what her lip secrets were actually, because hashtag Kylie Jenner lip kit. But thanks, Kylie, for revealing that one bit of information so transparently. Now, to be exact, she ordered 445cc moderate profile, half under the muscle, 3 exclamation points, silicone, 3 exclamation points, Garth Fisher, 3 exclamation points. Hope this helps. LOL. We love an LOL as punctuation. That really humanized everything. Anyway, I guess it's less of a recipe and more of what she went up to the counter and ordered. But now that's public information. And I might personally feel different after having kids, hopefully one day. But I think I'm just going to stick to the push-up bra situation for now, because reading that, just thinking of the surgery kind of gave me the heebie-jeebies. But I know plenty of people don't feel that way. So go order what she ordered. You do you. But there are others that are now following in her footsteps, like Alex Earl. I believe she shared, I could be wrong, but I think she shared her secret sauce. And then Barbara Corcoran of Shark Tank fame. I don't remember if she shared any breast augmentation, but she did reveal that she had 3 facelifts in addition to everything else in some post recently. So thank you, Barbara. I'm actually convinced that she's siphoning fresh blood from hot young pool boys, because that's kind of her thing. That's her type. She is like a Sigma cougar. But God bless her for the alleged transparency. She has so much money. She has nothing to lose. really appreciate the the CVS receipt of her purchases.
Microtrending.
So the Glow Job ladies and I had a conversation about Kris's face and Kylie's boob job situation, but to tie this kind of back into what I originally wanted to talk about because it is related, I believe that we have moved from an era of body positivity to body optimization. We're in our body op era, which could include body operations, obviously, but the optimization, the customization, modification, the preoccupation with all of it is a step away from pure body positivity. And I think it's interesting because what we're seeing is ostensibly kind of fat shamey and body negative, but it's being pushed in such a this is for your own good body optimization, self empowerment angle. It's being pushed from that direction that it's not, that it doesn't seem outright the opposite of body positivity. So again, from a place of body positivity, even just a few years ago, to body optimization. And I do feel the need to point out that the notion of like optimizing your body and your routine, your health and wellness and your appearance, none of this is new. Like this as a concept, it's always been just underneath the surface, or outright if you're like a bodybuilder or you're counting your macros for whatever reason, or you have orthorexia, like it's always been there for some people, but it just feels very transparently out there in a way that is like super marketable and is feels like a gold mine, just capitalistically. Like it makes sense that we're here now for a few different reasons. But yeah, this isn't news really, because if you remember like 5 years ago or so, again, not that long ago, there was an article about Instagram face. And I say an article, there were a lot, but there was one that I think like really made the rounds. And it was just noting how everyone is starting to look the same, which I think we had all noticed, but I think somebody just needed to like, put it on paper and call it out, which I thought was needed. But it's also one of the only reference points that we have. People still talk about Instagram face to this day. And what I find strange is there are a lot of people who like naturally have some of those features, like specifically ethnic features. They don't have Instagram face. Like they just look like that. And I know that's not generally what they're talking about, but I think we really talked ourselves into circles about Instagram face specifically as being kind of the locus of the issues, when we are really kind of missing the forest for the trees. Because yes, it is an issue that we are all starting to look the same, from body modifications to the clothes that we're choosing to wear, the trends that we're choosing to follow. But I think there are more harmful kind of just eugenics based, the E in Operation Beige. I think there are like broader issues that are more worth talking about, more worth investigating than specifically Instagram face. I think we need to acknowledge that that is a thing and that's part of the problem, but it is not the problem to focus on. It also kind of lets men off the hook a little bit. I mean, knowingly people are participating in like, how do I make myself more appealing to the male gaze? Some people might be participating in body modification in that way, but in terms of body optimization and kind of the hyper analysis of your own body that's happening, there are so many men to blame for kind of setting the stage for all this. Okay. And it has nothing to do specifically with women choosing to get Botox or something. Anyway, there are a lot of layered issues to all of this, but I do feel like I need to call out that I am not an expert when it comes to body positivity, the movement. And I gotta be honest, I don't remember 100% when the peak of this was. I feel like it's something that kind of like grew to a head and then there was some backlash toward it. Just speaking of discourse and just representation media wise, to me, it always felt like number one, a no brainer, and two, overdue. Like it was almost embarrassing that like we had not been having these conversations, and they probably were happening before. I don't want to be ignorant to progress that had been made in the past, but it always felt like, well, of course. It felt like what should be happening because we are worth so much more than our physical bodies. And you can tell that to the masterminds of Project 2025 because I know that they disagree. And I feel almost silly talking about this as an able-bodied thin person, acknowledging that I have not struggled in the way that so many have. Need to put that out there. Needing to point out that I am not the voice to listen to here, but I, like you, saw the shift in discourse, saw the shift in representation along with the backlash. But I do think there were moments where we all meant well, but I feel like they kind of backfired in terms of the empowerment that they were aiming for. I had to look back, but I feel like the earliest ones that I remember were the Dove Real Beauty ones. I think they're still on that campaign train however many years later, which is great. Good for them. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. But I do think that the range of talent, and again, I have not seen one recently, but as I was like looking back, the range of talent that they were portraying, that they were using, was still very conventional in terms of attractiveness. There was a little bit of body diversity. There was racial diversity, which should have always been there and should always be there. But everyone, at least in one specific ad that I looked back at, would honestly have qualified as too attractive for Love is Blind. Just objectively speaking, these are beautiful people that they used in these advertisements. So yeah, sorry to Love is Blind. Maybe that was mean, but I guess that's just advertising, unfortunately. And I'm in the belly of the beast, so I see it happening. I think there are different problems we're facing now than just attractive versus not, body diversity versus not. There is some other scary stuff going on. But under the guise of real beauty, at the end of the day, it is still to sell more Dove products. So, lest we forget, there is always going to be that tension between kind of what statement do we want to make about inclusivity and what are our KPIs besides positive brand sentiment. How are we going to have a great Q2? How are we going to push product? How are we going to get people to still want our body wash even though it is locked the fuck up at the drugstore and somebody has to go press a little button shamefully to get somebody to assist them? How do we get over that hump? Is it because we included body diversity in our advertisements? Maybe. Maybe you should care more about the communities that you are actually selling to. I don't know. I can feel myself going off on another tangent here, so I'm going to reel it back in. Anyway, another contentious one, if you remember, not in the beauty space, but still marketed mostly toward women, was what happened with the rebrand-ish of Victoria's Secret. There were a few different waves. I feel like there was kind of the first, hey, we're so sorry, were going to switch things up. And then there were the fashion shows, because Victoria's Secret was like a misogynistic mess, kind of all over the place. I do want to acknowledge that. As much as I have shopped there in the past, I still sometimes shop there. They're not a company that I hold in particularly high regard. And there was a time where I think they were one of the capital P problems when it comes to body negativity. And so there was an attempt to clean up their act. There was a lot that needed an overhaul. It's still, you looked at the logo and it still smelled like the 2010s. And I love their body sprays, but there is an aroma of hater, of bitchy exclusivity. The waists were still nowhere to be found up until the rebrand. But again, if I'm remembering correctly, they kind of overcorrected in a way. And you're never going to make everyone happy, but it just wasn't it. And Fenty Savage, I think around the same time, they did it right. Leave it to Rihanna, because the colorways and the designs were still the sexy lingerie, feel good, confidence boosting pieces that someone of any size should have access to. And I'm pretty sure, I don't remember kind of the launch of Fenty Savage specifically, only vaguely. But I think that was just baked into the brand from the start. I would be shocked if it was something that was added after the fact. They were always going to be more inclusive. So shout out Fenty Savage, also Fenty Beauty. Love your products. But Victoria's Secret, on the other hand, was like, oh, you're plus size? Here's some beige. And I love a nude set, but you know what I mean. It was like, here are all of the ranges of beige. And not in a Skims way. You know you're in trouble when Skims is like the hotter, cooler choice. It's really like they sucked the soul out of the brand. And then the fashion show, I'm not remembering if there were multiple shows post rebrand, but whatever the most recent one was, which was either last year or the year before, was so god awful. It was so underwhelming. There were no wings, no camp, which is necessary. That is like kind of the heart of the Victoria's Secret fashion show. It is a show. Camp must be present. Very little serving actually happening. Also, in terms of the looks, like a kitchen slammed, a total lack of serving. And it looked like it was filmed in a prison. Maybe prescient, the Victoria's Secret fashion show. It was perhaps a beige warning sign to all of us, women. And because I am never letting them off the hook, ever, Abercrombie did the same damn thing. Maybe a little bit less egregiously, because Victoria's Secret doesn't have as many categories. They have their curve love, like the kind of stretchy, different shaped waistbands, more sizes in their denim. They have that now. But if you take a look at the rest of their offerings, tell me it's not giving Madewell. Maybe fewer mustard tones, but it seems to be maybe very slightly younger, but it's kind of in the same camp. Or like Aritzia Assistant Teacher Edition. They took the sexy of Abercrombie out back and shot it, because that's only for skinny white people, apparently. And the irony should not be lost on us, because if you put those, that doesn't sound right at all. The average skinny white person should not be determining what's sexy and what's not. This is not 1994. I don't know. One of those years.
Microtrending.
Anyway, there has been the shift toward body positivity and now venturing away from it. And everything I just mentioned is still technically happening. And you can thank Operation Beige for some of the puritanism I think that has been baked in. But brands now, there was like a reckoning in 2020, and I think some of them have like just given up. But there is overall a mandate to include more visible diversity, like across the board. And I've been in meetings with really big brands where them as clients have mentioned this specifically, which is not surprising. But when it's spoken of in these meetings, it doesn't really feel genuinely like body positivity. That might be what you're seeing in the end content, in the end advertisement, but the way that it's spoken of, as you can probably imagine, feels less like body positivity and more like body quotas. And you'd be a bona fide idiot to think that AI is not already replacing and taking gigs from talent of all kinds of diversity, body size included. It's all a little less human than it should be. It's a lot less human than it should be. And again, you might not think about how the sausage is made unless you've got a front row seat to the sausage factory. But the way that these conversations, and it's not always gross, but like there is a very like clinical nature, a very, we're trying to cover our bases and like, you know, reach certain quotas versus like, hey, we're doing this because we genuinely care about our audiences. In case you were wondering. Anyway, I'm cheating on LaCroix, by the way, with bubbly. This is Bellini Bliss. It's just okay. Anyway, the body quota thing, a very disturbing thing to say out loud. But that's more of how it feels and has honestly always felt in marketing. I think it's just become a little bit grosser when you know that they feel the pressure to show specific types of bodies. But beyond marketing on the individual level, as girlies online, the trend toward body optimization, which I mentioned before, is what I think is most important to be aware of, because it's not just a shift away from body positivity. It is like an active threat in the form of peer pressure, and hopefully not worse. It is absolutely, definitely part of the Operation Beige playbook, specifically. And again, beige is boring and engineered to identify with gentrification and eugenics, as a refresher. But this body optimization is specifically the engineered part, and then the identification, and then maybe a little bit less about the gentrification part, but definitely the eugenics. The gentrification is a little bit more about like, what am I purchasing? Where am I living? What restaurants am I going to, etc. The West Village girly situation. But body optimization, think about the E, the I, and the other E. But within that, and because Operation Beige is so kind of, I mean, it is obvious, but it's also under the radar in some ways because it's just like woven into things that are marketed toward you. It is really seamless and sinister. Body optimization, body op, because who could hate you for wanting to become the best version of yourself? Only a hater would not wish that for you. Come on. And I think that the tricky part of this is that, yes, no one should come for you when you're just trying to reach the top, when you are just trying to become your best self. But especially if you're young and impressionable and your prefrontal cortex is not done cortexing, you are not the one who's determining what's best. The definition of best for you, you think you know what it is, but more often than not, it exists outside of you. And this has more to do with like how you present yourself and your appearance. Then like you might know perhaps like which career path might be best for you. You might know which sort of foods you're allergic to and not. But in terms of the like, how am I going to best position myself in society? How do I want, what kind of person do I want to be? That's like the danger zone here. Who do I want to associate with? Who do I want to believe? Who do I aspire to be? What is best in that sense? And I know I'm specifically speaking about young women online because I feel like I can speak to that a little bit more, but absolutely this is happening with young men online. The manosphere, which is maybe a topic for another time. Incel culture, that compass of like what's best, whatever is the true north for them, completely fucked. And we are living with the repercussions right now, but bringing it back mostly to, again, women, young women on the internet. In terms of what is best, what you are seeing online time and time again, over and over, scrolling, in this especially beige era, are your reference points that you're seeing are clones of each other in a way. So it becomes really easy to like figure out whatever you think the formula is to become a desirable person. You're not looking up to a singular Kardashian anymore. You are looking at the fruit that has fallen off the Kardashian crabapple tree, or the Hailey Bieber, what's fallen off the Hailey Bieber turnip truck, to be more relevant to what's happening right now. So tied to this, what you see happening in terms of body optimization is low-key tied to the I see it, I like it, I want it, I got it, add to cart, TikTok shop consumer culture. And this is what makes it so seamless. And this is one of the reasons why back in 2023, I started the series satirizing the like clean girl aesthetic mood board guide. Here's how to become an it girl content, is to shed a little bit of light on how just insane all of this is in terms of like the revolving wheel of the trend cycle, the nonstop hamster wheel. It's in front of you. Everyone else has it. Why don't you? Boob job included. You see the celebrity or influencer, you get the formula, you get the boob job recipe directly from the source. What could be better? What could be more seamless? That could be you now. And I know this has been happening. We're kind of seeing it like very freshly in the discourse right now. They finally caught on, these celebrities and barely celebrities, that they are able to financially benefit from putting shame aside and getting rid of gatekeeping. They're still girl bossing, but they've decided to part ways with gatekeeping. There's a benefit now to being radically transparent, to sharing their secrets. Because if you'll remember, we have been kind of turning on the Kardashian-Jenners a little bit. I know that like Kris and her old face and now new face have been like hard at work kind of, pushing specific relationships and stories and situations, obviously, to the forefront. But they've kind of fallen off a little bit. And now, magically, Kylie's such a girl's girl for sharing her breast augmentation specs like a Chipotle order. Here's what I got, like an Air One smoothie ingredients list. Never mind that Courtney and Chloe recently on a podcast were agreeing that going to school is outdated. Hits over teachers, I guess. Maybe they needed to bury that story. Maybe they wanted to bury the story of Kris's new face. So thank you again, Kylie. There was a time, I think, when that family, the Kardashian-Jenners, did not bother me as much. They were kind of just there. And I knew that they were problematic in some ways, but I didn't see them as as problematic, I have to admit, as Chris Brown or Elon, who has been a problem for longer than people realize. Um, but I just didn't see them as worth my energy about keeping up with. And I will admit, I did used to like the KKW beauty products, RIP, and some of the fragrances, but that was a while ago. Now I feel some rage because they're not as in the public eye, like they are not as popular. They passed the peak of their popularity, but they are saying some controversial shit now, like the school situation, and people might see that and be like, that's absolutely inane, totally problematic. How could only a billionaire would say schooling is outdated because they can homeschool their kid? But the average person is not necessarily thinking that. I think there are plenty of people who would read a headline like that. Kourtney Kardashian says school is outdated, and unfortunately might be influenced enough to actually think, oh, maybe she has a point. And even if they don't think anyway, they read that headline and they say, oh, that's crazy, and they keep scrolling. Language matters, and the fact that that headline was posted at all, the fact that these people with these bullshit backwards billionaire brain thoughts, the fact that we're still giving them airtime, headline space, articles written about them, and again, would have to probably blame Kris Jenner. That's a problem. And so that's where the rage comes in. Because there seems to be a unification of specific morals, which is to say lack thereof, within the billionaire class, that is really just not helping what's going on right now overall. Anyway, related to this, I do have to bring back something that I had shared on TikTok a long while ago now, and it was the notion that you can't syllabize what must be alchemized, which is my own little, much more obnoxious way of saying that there is not a formula or a checklist for most things, a shopping list for living your life, to becoming that best version of yourself. This belief that I have is in direct opposition with body optimization, I feel like. And it's something that honestly is hard to divorce yourself from, especially if you have in your mind of, oh, if I just fix these 3 things, everything's going to be better. And that's not exactly what I mean. I think that if you have goals in terms of like, oh, if I get out of this work situation, if I work on my health and fitness, and if I finally take my car to get serviced, that those three things are going to fix my life. Those things probably will help you, and that is actually like an actionable list. I think it's totally fine to have a list of goals or things that are more easily achievable. What doesn't work is the notion that like if I check these things off, I will be cool, or I will suddenly be accepted, or I will be fulfilled, I will reach enlightenment, I will be immune to suffering if I get a boob job, if I get a labubu, if I give my labubu a boob job, right? Like those things, they might make you happy in the moment, and there's something that you might want to share with your followers, but like that's not becoming the best version of yourself. But I think in terms of the like checklist or shopping list, everything really does feel built around this now. Like if you just buy XYZ products, if you take these courses, if you follow these steps, if you drink raw milk, if you use beef tallow, if you lower your cortisol levels, if you stop yourself from being so fucking bloated all the time, if you show this to your plastic surgeon, you too can reach the beige throne of enlightenment. You too can be Hailey Bieber, problematic celebrity in an even more problematic marriage, but still better than everyone else.
Microtrending.
This is something that I know I can dig like a little too deep on. So I'm going to try to like take a step back and try to make sense of this in a more succinct way. Like, where did all this bullshit come from? On the furthest reaching side of things, if we want to go for a reach, and I love to do that, I think there is something about the normalization of customization on demand from the fast casual space. So yes, I am again blaming Chipotle. And not just because I am mad at them for getting meat in my veggie order a few times. But we really expect everything to be like perfectly made to order for us, and then it's not going to fuck up the rest of our day as long as those needs are met. But as always, more importantly, of course, I need to give a big shout out and big fuck you to big tech, because optimization has always been their cubicle Zen garden to play in. That's their word, and we're living it. I was talking to my sister about this recently, just like big tech hive mind and how it exists in different ways between LA and the Bay Area. We've just seen it in the flesh, in both metropolitan areas. I was thinking there might be some sort of bath dichotomy. Like the tech brethren in LA are more likely to go to a sound bath, and the Bay Area tech bros, the SF ones, are really into ice baths, cold plunging. But the reality is they're all doing all of that, and also trying to get the blood of young people or plasma or whatever pumped into them to be forever 40 or whatever. I know there's that one guy that's done it, but there's definitely others. But they're all wearing supremely unfuckable Vuori outfits. The difference might be in the haircuts, maybe, and in maybe Patagonia vest versus like a Venice windbreaker or quarter zip fleece. I don't know. The important thing to note is that as much as big tech is behind the scenes, they're not just like the stage hands. They are the puppeteers of a lot of stuff that is decidedly not techy. And again, just like body optimization has always been around in some way, shape, or form, there has always been a trickle down effect from these apps, the apps on our phone, to our vernacular. Like so many of the verbs we use on the daily come from these apps. And so too does optimization, which again is truly nerd pilled. It's a lot incel-y as well. There's so much more to go into there, but that's there as well. They're on a mission to fix something about themselves to be more lovable, and it's never their personality or misogyny, so something to consider. But optimization, thanks to big tech, trickle down, does have us in a chokehold. And I think it really picked up speed just based on what was happening at the peak of the pandemic. Obviously, we were all reliant on technology. How convenient. But just the cleanliness is next to godliness of everything. Disinfection core, clean girl, very important. And along with clean girl, the kind of whitewashing dog whistle of all that, the appropriation. I feel like that it really was a watershed moment. I will never shut up about clean girl and what happened there. But we're not even like living in the aftermath of it, because it is obviously still alive and well, but it's a mutated virus. It was a city girl, and now she's gone country. If you look at the trends, if you follow like the leading trend, clean girl wears cowboy boots now rather than New Balance or Sambas, if you've been paying attention. And it's so weird if you think about it. You just like picture it holding in your mind the juxtaposition of quote unquote optimizing your life and being trad, using beef tallow. Here's how to optimize your life. Get back to the land. Do things the hard way. Really lean into a full regression of your rights as a woman. Go back to the traditional family. Forget birth control. There is probably an actual name for what's going on. Like everything I just mentioned, just like the marriage of like what's happening in tech, obviously fascism, and then the country bumpkin of it all. I feel like there is, and I'm forgetting it. So I'll just call it Robo Country or Home on the Data Farm. But culturally, let me be clear, we're in kind of a tough spot. And thankfully, there is some good art to come out of what's going on still. Protect creatives at all costs. But we are living in Benson Boone's America. I feel like the only thing worse might have been like the LMFAO era, or that peak of entertainment when DJ Khaled was lost on his jet ski. But at least we were having fun. I wasn't worried about optimizing my life when I was watching DJ Khaled snaps about major keys or playing Pokemon Go. I was worried about finding a job because I was unemployed at the time, but I wasn't looking for a celebrity to tell me what to do. Which is maybe not true, because DJ Khaled was revealing his tips But none of it had to do with body image. He was a body positivity king, and he was out there. I guess one last thing to touch on in terms of the body op era that we're in, the move away from body positivity, is of course the hashtag skinny talk and Liv Schmidt situation, which I know think I've mentioned a couple times as it's come up in your answers to my Instagram story questions. And as much as I do want to talk about that, I don't think I would talk about it at length without first ensuring that I'm talking about it in a sensitive way, because we're dealing with like life or death stuff. I think when we talk really seriously about the implications of skinny talk and pro Anna content, but I will touch on it a little bit because I think it is still relevant to kind of the overall body optimization trend that we're seeing. In general, we have young, and some of them are older, but generally like young, impressionable fans of these internet personalities like Liv Schmidt, who are very obviously dealing with disordered eating habits. And these viewers are eating up these tips on how to eat less and be skinny for you, not for anyone else. And again, with body optimization, this is why I feel like this skinny talk fits in here, is because it's being framed as female empowerment. And it is being presented in a very gender stereotype reinforcing way. Like, when your boyfriend eats this, here's what you should order instead. And that's a whole other can of worms, and is not surprising given the climate of everything right now. But so maybe there is a little bit of like be skinny for him, but it's mostly for you, is how it's presented. And on another layer to this, there is kind of also the you don't owe anyone anything. You're doing this for you. Be skinny because you want to. And also, you're going to be better than everyone else and be part of the skinny society, which is arguably more diabolical than whatever was happening before, like tabloid wise in the 2000s, where like, oh, this celebrity looks like a whale, or you look like a whale and you should eat less. I'm not seeing that now with the skinny talk stuff. There probably is there. I'm not like in the trenches with these reporters that are like investigating, but it does feel more like girl power stuff. And that again is body optimization. Thank you, Liv, for sharing your tips on how to avoid eating a certain number of calories before noon. Thank you, Kylie, for the recipe on how to get the boob job that will look completely out of whack with my emaciated frame. Thanks to Liv's tips. Thank you, Big Tech, for continuing to feed me on my FYP all of the videos that tell me that I am just one purchase away from my dream body and my dream life. It's not hope core if you are always hoping for something more. And if you're left hating yourself by whatever measure in your quest for body optimization, it's a hamster wheel, like the trend cycle. And you can jump off at any time. Anyway, I know this is a little bit more ranty than normal. I've had some notes written down, but like a lot of this has just been in my brain for a while. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was the Kylie Jenner boob situation. And then, of course, Kris's new face, and just how we're seeing each other's bodies and our own bodies as like the sum of these parts that we can modify on demand. It's giving Roblox a little bit. It's not unlike The Sims. Don't think too much into that, okay? Don't like, that's a disturbing rabbit hole to think about. But that is what it feels like. Anyway, if there's anything specifically in terms of body optimization that stands out to you that you find particularly disturbing or interesting, let me know. And as always, if you have a specific micro-trending topic, you can always email or DM me. You are more than your body parts. A body part should never be a microtrend. And be discerning about any boob job recipes that you see coming across your FYP. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you later.
Microtrending.